Julie Youngblood here with Youngblood Coaching and Consulting, and I am going to go over how to present the residential purchase agreement in Nevada, specifically with GLVAR. Hopefully, you've read this over a bunch of times, and that's why you're at a point now where you're watching this video. Our goal here is for you to learn how to explain things, knowing that I'm not your broker. You should always talk to your broker about this sort of stuff, and I'm absolutely not an attorney, so I am not going to be interpreting law or giving legal advice. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to pretend like I'm going over the offer with the buyer. You will notice as you follow along that I don't touch on every single paragraph. I do touch on the big ones though. So I always start like this. Okay, Mr. Buyer, we're going to go over the purchase agreement. Did you get a chance to read it over? The reason I ask them that is because at my buyer consultation, I always give them a blank copy of the contract so that they do have the chance to read it over. It's 11 pages, 10 pages, and that's a lot of information to expect somebody to understand if this is the very first time they're seeing it. So I like to give people the opportunity ahead of time to read it over, ask any questions. So by the time we get to this point, they've actually seen the contract before, minus obviously what we had to fill in. Did you get a chance to read it? Yes or no? Great. Now, I can go over this a couple of different ways, Mr. Buyer. I can either touch on everything and explain every paragraph, or I can go over the finer points. What is going to work best for you? I like to give them the option because there are some people who, if you literally explained every single section, they would like rip out their eyeballs. And there are other people who really enjoy going through the process and understanding everything that's going on. So I let them tell me how they want this to be handled. The only reason or the only way you can ask that is if you actually know how to do both. Does that make sense? Perfect. So that's why I have you read the contract so you understand the contract so that if somebody asks you a specific question, you have the ability to give an answer or say, I'm really not sure. Let me ask my broker and I'll get back to you on that. Without further ado, here we go. All right, Mr. Buyer, so this is our offer. Today's the date. This is your name. This is the property address that we are, I usually do it this way, the property address that we're going to be offering on. It says here that you do intend to occupy the property. Great. Now here's our earnest money. We did talk a little bit about earnest money at our initial consultation. Earnest money is the upfront money that we put to let the seller know that we are absolutely serious about moving forward and purchasing this property. It also lets them know that if for whatever reason we decide to back out, outside of all of those big reasons that we can back out, this would be the compensation the seller would get for taking their home off the market. Does that make sense? Great. Right here it says that we're doing an FHA loan. Our additional down payment is X dollars for a total purchase price of $500 million. That would never be an FHA offer, just for the record. And it says right here under new loan application that now I know you've already done your application. We put a range in here. In the next 3 to 5 business days, you're going to go ahead and actually complete the full application and get everything that you need to the lender. Do you have any questions on this? No? Great. Go ahead and initial right here. Boom. Appraisal contingency. So Mr. Buyer, I want to talk a little bit about what this means. This is going to put the monkey on our back to push the lender and the appraiser along to make sure that they get it done in a certain amount of time. Now with the FHA, what we have found is that typically within 21 days, that gives the lender time to order the appraisal, you pay for it, and then the appraiser can get out there, turn around and get us an appraisal value back within the 21 days. On top of getting the appraisal back, if we have any problems with it, this would also be the time frame that we have to get that negotiated. So we're going to put 21 days in here. Let's play devil's advocate. Let's say it's day 20 and we still don't have the appraisal back. Or let's say it's day 20 and the appraisal came in low and we are not hearing back from the seller. We've asked them to reduce their price. We have the responsibility as the buyers to cancel the contract based on the seller not responding. Once the appraisal contingency deadline passes, with or without an agreement, your ability to cancel the contract based on the appraised value has passed. Does that make sense? I thought you might say that. You're super responsive today. Loan contingency. Now, this is a newer contract for us, and so this also puts the onus on you to perform. Typically in the old contract, the loan contingency stayed in place all the way until close of escrow. What we're saying here is that, Mr. Seller, there will be a certain date in this escrow process where we will know that we are qualified for the loan. In other words, we know the appraisal's done, you've turned in your bank statements, you've done all those things that the lender wants you to do, and the lender is ready to give you an unconditional loan approval or let you know that you've been cleared to close. We're going to put 30 days here. That should be more than enough time for the appraisal to come back and for everything to get handled. If for whatever reason we find out during the process that you are not going to qualify for the loan, and it can happen, we have to let the sellers know in writing. If we get to that 30-day mark and then on day 31 we find out you're not qualified for the loan, you can't cancel based on the loan contingency because that date has passed. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So you can see why it's going to be really important to work hand in hand with the lender to make sure that we get them everything that they need. Okay, great. Cash purchase, that's NA on this particular deal. However, usually I would put done. I always like to include the proof of funds at the time that we submit the offer. Sale of other property, a lot of times this is not going to be contingent upon the sale of another property. This, by the way, is I'm talking to you, the agent. I'm not pretending like you're the buyer right now. If it is, by the way, do yourself a favor. If it is contingent, call the listing agent and have a really intelligent conversation with them about what that looks like. If you leave it up to this 4 lines of verbiage to do all the heavy lifting and negotiating for you, you will scare off the seller. So call the listing agent, have a conversation, state your case, let them know exactly where you're at. Fixtures and personal property. Mr. Buyer, this is where we've asked for the refrigerator, washer, and dryer. All of the other, there's a lot of common things in here. That's why we ask that you read it. The ceiling fans are included, the water softeners included, the alarm system's included. So this is where we put the things that aren't typical, which would be the refrigerator, washer, dryer. Opening of escrow. This is where we've requested to open escrow. And so you're going to put whoever your title officer and your escrow officer is. I'm sorry, your title company and your escrow officer. I like to ask the clients if they do have a preference. Most of the time, they don't know anybody in that industry, and occasionally they do know somebody. So if their sister works at a title company, she may be able to get a discount. So we like to ask. If not, put in whoever you prefer. Do you have any questions on this page? Great, go ahead and initial. Awesome. Okay, close of escrow. Close of escrow shall be on or before. Put a date in there. If it's FHA, give yourself at least 30 days. If it's VA, give yourself 45 days. If it's conventional, 30 should be good. Keep in mind there's lots of hiccups, and you also want this close of escrow date to not come before your contingency deadlines. So just be aware of that when you're writing the offer. I always like to let my buyers know, don't make any hard plans around this date because it can change. And that's going to probably be the hardest part for you as a buyer, is knowing that this date can move and shift every day, and it can move and shift by days or weeks at a time. So we'll keep them posted. What I don't want my buyer to do is say, yes, we're closing on the 30th, and then they run out and hire a moving van only to find that we needed a little bit of an extension, and now they've got some hard money out that they're not going to get back because they have to reschedule moving vans, so on and so forth. Buyer's due diligence period. Mr. Buyer, you're going to have a time frame to go through and actually make sure that this is the property that you do want to buy. So I'm going to mark that it is contingent upon you completing a due diligence period. And we're going to put 15 days here. Now within that time frame, our job is to go into the property. I'm going to recommend that you do a home inspection, hire a certified home inspector. And when we get the report back with whatever amount of days we have left in that 15-day time frame, we have to negotiate with the seller. This is pretty important. If for whatever reason we send a request for repairs to the seller and they do not respond to us and it's day 14, we must either decide to move on buying this property the way it is, or we have to cancel the transaction. If for whatever reason the time frame passes and we haven't addressed the issue, we haven't come to an agreement, your due diligence period is over. Does that make sense? So this is another great reason to hire me. Okay. Property inspection and condition. This just talks about how we are not certified home inspectors and we do recommend that you hire professionals. Buyer's right to cancel or resolve objections. This talks again about how that has got to be done within the due diligence time frame, and it has to be done in writing. Failure to cancel or resolve objections. It's so important they're going to have you initial it again. It's just reiterating that if you understand that for whatever reason, if you don't resolve or cancel, your time frame is passed. Does that make sense? Great. Initial. Any other questions on this page? Great. Initial at the bottom. Inspections, again, we're going to recommend that you do get inspections. The seller is required to have utilities on for us. These are the type of inspections that you can get. We're going to put home inspection to be paid for by the buyer. If it's a VA loan, make sure you mark termite inspection to be paid by the seller. If there are any other inspections, like if the house has a pool or spa, you're going to want that handled. If it's on a well, you're going to want to get that inspected. If it's connected to septic, you're going to want to get that inspected. It's very important. Okay, buyer's request for repairs, we will submit to the lender or the seller's agent if we do find any repairs that we want to be done, a request for repairs. And we have to have all that negotiated again within that due diligence time frame. Title fees, escrow fees, and the appraisal fees. I've gone ahead and split this up the way that we typically do in the state of Nevada. So you're going to pay your costs and the seller's going to pay their costs. Prorations, basically that just says that you pick up where the seller left off. The preliminary title report, within the first 10 days after we open escrow, title is going to generate a title report. It's just going to let us know if there's anything weird going on with the title. You'll get a copy of that, look it over, we're going to look it over, and if there's anything we need to be aware of, our title company will let us know. Do you have any questions on this? Great, go ahead and initial right there. All right, Mr. Buyer, this is where we've asked for some help with our closing costs. Do you remember how we talked about that? So we're going to ask for $5,000 to be credited from the seller to you, including any of those fees that are associated with your loan. Home warranty protection plan, we have asked for the 1-year home warranty protection plan not to exceed insert dollar amount. You're going to select the home warranty protection plan, however, that we're going to ask the seller to pay for it. If for whatever reason the seller won't pay for it, I'm going to highly recommend that you still get one. It's that important, and it'll take care of the property, a lot of parts of the property, for the first year after, and then you can extend after that. Common interest communities. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here just because your property that you're purchasing is in a common interest community, also known as a homeowners association. So the seller has so many days to order the resale package. They have 2 days. So the resale package is basically, it's usually like this big, and it includes all of the CC&Rs, rules and regulations, operating expense, all that fun stuff that you're going to need to make a decision to make sure this is the house you want to move forward with. So once the seller orders it, the HOA, they have 10 days to get it to us. Once I receive the package, you have 5 days to approve or disapprove. So I'm going to give you the package. I'm not going to read it because I'm not going to live there. I'm going to give you the package. You're going to look through it. And if there's something in there that you just can't live with, like for example, you wanted to paint the house purple, they don't allow that. Or you wanted to park a boat in the driveway and they don't allow that, we have 5 days to cancel and get your earnest money back based on the CIC documents. Does that make sense? It's pretty important. We're going to ask that the seller pay for the demand, the capital contribution, the transfer fee, and any other things that come up with the CIC. Here's just a different list of disclosures, some that are state mandated that we've requested the seller provide to us. Do you have any questions on this page? Great, go ahead and initial right here. We love it. Federal Fair Housing just says that we will not discriminate. Walkthrough, about 3 to 5 days before we close escrow, we're going to go through and do a walkthrough of the property. Now this is the time where we go and we make sure that the home is in the same condition as when we saw it, and any repairs that we had requested to be done, that those had been handled. It's not the time to go through and decide that you don't like the color of the paint, right? We're just making sure that the sellers didn't run off with that Tiffany chandelier that was supposed to be included, and that the appliances haven't been switched out for Craigslist models. If for whatever reason something pops up during the walkthrough, this will be our last chance to hold up closing escrow and make sure that everything gets handled. Do you have any questions on the walkthrough? Delivery of possession, we've asked to take possession at close of escrow. Risk of loss just says that if for whatever reason during this escrow process, if the house burns down, congratulations, you don't have to buy it unless you want to. Cancellation of the agreement. We're going to initial here that we do agree to mediate first, which means if for whatever reason the whole deal blows up, instead of suing the pants off of each other, we're going to try to work it out. And our association, GLVAR, has a great mediation program to help facilitate that. If for whatever reason you default, and it's within the reasons that you can default, you may get your earnest money back. If it's outside of the many reasons that you're allowed to default, we may have a problem. And I'm not an attorney, so I can't give you much advice on that. Let's just try to keep it together and do the right thing. Do you have any questions on this page? No, go ahead and initial here. Great. Escrow. Escrow is a third neutral party, and they want you to know that. They don't want to be held responsible for anything that goes wrong. If for whatever reason the caca hits the fan, excuse my French, they're a third neutral party. They don't negotiate contracts. They don't write addendums. All they simply do is facilitate the coming together of the contract and making sure that the title and the escrow, all that flows freely and easily. Unclaimed funds, if for whatever reason you have funds that you've left at the title company, they're basically going to charge you interest. That's what that says. Broker fees, this just says that whatever we agreed upon when we originally entered into our agency relationship stays the same. Now, I don't charge a buyer additional commission. Some people do. And this just discloses that I don't. Waiver of claims, this just letting you know that I am an agent. I'm not a home inspector. I'm not a lender. I certainly don't do surveys for the county. And anything that you are concerned with, we recommend that you hire a professional who really works within that scope. Definitions, I'm going to actually go on to the next page because it goes there. These are things that we as realtors say all day, things like CIC or HOA or broker or bona fide. This is almost like your glossary of terms so that when you're absolutely confused by what we're saying, you have somewhere to go. Do you have any questions on this page? Great, go ahead and initial right there. Signatures, delivery, and notices in the digital world, digital signatures are okay. Unless otherwise, there's a couple of things that you have to actually cancel with real signatures and in writing with letters. And if we were to go down that route, we would talk about it. For the most part, those signatures are considered okay, or digital signatures are okay. 1031 exchange does not apply to you. Just so you know, as the agent, a 1031 tax-deferred exchange is for investment properties, and it's when a seller is selling an investment property and they're going to realize a profit. And so instead of paying taxes on it, they can choose to defer the taxes if they name a like property within so many days. They just have to disclose to the buyer that they're doing a 1031 tax deferred exchange. It doesn't impact the buyer at all. It changes nothing for you. They just have to let us know. Other essential terms, hey, time is of the essence and everything must be reduced to writing. So if you happen to be driving by the house and you see the seller outside and you two get together and you decide that he's gonna leave the bed behind, and then we go to the walkthrough and the bed's not there, that wasn't reduced to writing. Everything must be reduced to writing for it to be legally binding. Do you have any questions on this page? I didn't think so. Go ahead and initial. Great. This is a legally binding contract. If you are uncomfortable with anything in here, we highly recommend that before we continue signing that you consult an attorney. This is a form that was put together by the Greater Las Vegas Association of Realtors. This is where we're going to actually acknowledge who represents who. So this just is my information. And it says here that you do not have an interest in, you are not a licensee with an interest in the property. Perfect. We're going to give the sellers until 5 o'clock on Friday to get back to us. So it's Wednesday now, which means if I don't hear from them Thursday or Friday, you won't hear from me until Friday evening. And I tell them that so that they don't call you every hour. Did you hear anything? Did you hear anything? Here's where we're going to sign our offer, and then we're going to initial at the bottom. Any questions on this page? Perfect. And the very last page, this is a disclosure just letting you know who represents the seller. FIRPTA is the Foreign Investor Real Estate Protect, I can never remember what it is exactly. Basically what it is though is foreign investors have a special taxes that they have to pay and they have to disclose it to the buyer if they're subject to it, just to scare the crap out of you. If for whatever reason this foreign investor doesn't pay the taxes from the proceeds, the government will come after the buyer for whatever reason. It's ridiculous. So it's important for you to know as a buyer and as a buyer's agent if the seller is subject to FIRPTA, and that you hire the right title company to make sure that the funds get withheld and that your buyer isn't exposed. This is where the seller is either going to accept, counter, or reject our offer, and they're going to sign there. Do you have any questions? Great, go ahead and initial right there. So that's it. I mean, practice it, know it, love it. Obviously, that was a very detailed version. It doesn't have to always be that detailed. Sometimes you read your client. Some people don't care and they're literally just going to sign, 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 sign. Read the cues. It would be really impressive if you could, with confidence, explain your purchase agreement. And that's really what our goal is for you in coaching. If you have any questions, you can give us a call. As always, 702-234-8181.